Sammy. Sammy. In the sixth spot. Ho ho. What does he do? Right out the gate, Garrett Wilson. Well, first of all, I should review his keeper. Tank down in the 13th. That's good value. Tank's going in like the fifth round. I think he's actually a good sixth or seventh round pick. Doesn't matter. Good value on Tank. He comes off, he goes, grabs another wide receiver to pair with him. Garrett Wilson, Kyron Williams, Jalen Hurts in the third, Devontae Smith, Pickens, Najee, Eckler, Evan Ingram, Deontay Johnson, Romeo Dobbs, Zach Charbonnet, Goddard, Dell Keeper, T-Law. All right. What's the best part about this team? The best picks? I'm just going to say the stack. Going Hurts and Devontae in the third and fourth, that could really work out for you. And I don't think either of them's a reach. I think Devontae's a great value, especially considering the keepers. The 4-7 is like the 55th pick. I think there's huge chance he outperforms that. And then, yeah, Hurts could be good to go with him. I also like the Evan Ingram pick a lot. Especially pairing him up with, I don't know, you're not really ever going to start Lawrence, but I guess it looks cool to have the little mini stack there. But yeah, I think Ingram could catch a bunch of balls in this offense. I think the Jags will have some positive regression this year. It's really hard for them to be as bad as they were last year. And even though they were bad last year, Evan Ingram was still really good and really caught a lot of passes. I mean, shit, the tight end 2 going in the 8th round, like, say he does way worse than last year and regresses, what's he going to be? Tight end 6? Tight end 7? Nothing wrong with getting tight end 6 or tight end 7 after everybody else took their tight end, right? So I think that was weird that there was a slippage there. I don't know if people are predicting that he's just old, but T-Law likes him. So what are the worst picks? Well, without being too long-winded, Garrett Wilson, where he got drafted, I don't love that. Kyron Williams, I don't love that as your RB1. I don't know how I feel about Najee Harris and Austin Eckler at the 6th and 7th rounds. So, yeah, not in love with any of those. I guess I'll elaborate a little on Garrett Wilson. He's just being drafted at his ceiling. Like, what would be an amazing year for Garrett Wilson? If he goes from the I know he's going to Aaron Rodgers, right? So he was the wide receiver 26 last year. Let's say Aaron Rodgers is, 3 times better than whoever he had throwing last year. So now Garrett Wilson's the wide receiver 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. Well, you just drafted him at the wide receiver 6, so he better be the wide receiver 6. And that's his peak. That's what I think his ceiling is. So say he underperforms just a little bit and he's wide receiver 12. Well, you're going to be mad at taking him in the middle of the first round. So that's just how it is. There's not a lot of room to be wrong at the top. And I think that he is one of the most, just because you haven't seen it before, he's one of the most volatile picks you can make in this first round. I would like someone like a JT or an ETN there. Yeah, that's just me though. Kyron is your RB1 is risky. It could be really good. I know RB gets really thin there. He was kind of forced into it. I think in a perfect world, you triple tap wide receiver, and then maybe you grab like a James Cook or a Joe Mixon on the way back in the third, but then you can't take Hurts in the third. So he chose to go the Kyron route. Hopefully it works out for him, but that's a little risky because last year he's getting 100% of those snaps, isn't he? What percentage of the snaps are you getting? Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be in those upper 90s or those mid 90s, upper 70s, mid 80% snap share with Corum. If he seeds 7 or 8 carries and catches to Corum a game, I don't know if he's going to return on middle of the second round. I've done a lot of rambling, and I'm only through his best and worst picks. I'm rambling a lot about the worst picks. I hate Najee in the 6th, and I hate Eckler in the 7th. I don't see how either of these guys wins you a fantasy league, but maybe I'll be proven wrong. It's just a weird combo to have as your RB2 and your flex 2. Like, maybe they both really, really suck and are unplayable. Like, it's on the board that Warren takes all Najee's touches. It's on the board that Brian Robinson takes all of Eckler's touches, and the Commanders suck, and Jaden Daniels runs everything in. Like, I don't like to draft that in my 7th rounder. So, what's strong about this team? The stack, Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith, of course. What's weak about this team? I just said it. The RBs and the flex there. Pickens and Najee at your flexes, or Pickens and Eckler at your flexes is like not Is anyone excited about that? Like, am I in an island here and thinking that kind of sucks ass relative to everybody else's? Like, I know you can be excited about Garrett Wilson and Devontae Smith maybe and Kyron Williams and Jalen Hurts, but like, fantasy football is more than just your first four players and your tight end. Like, you got to start two flex players every week. They make up 30, like 20, 25% of your scoring. I think everyone's going to outscore Najee Harris and George Pickens, or, George Pickens and Austin Eckler, whichever one you're throwing in there. And I don't know who is coming off this bench to help. Like, yeah, if Kenneth Walker gets hurt, maybe this team's really good because he has Charbonnet to fill in. But saying that you drafted good just because of the 5% chance that get an injury bump, like, I'm not going to give him credit for that. So on its face, I think that that's the weakness of this team. Best case scenario, Jalen Hurts throws 15 touchdowns to Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts still does the tush push. Rodgers is in his prime, and Garrett Wilson is prime Devontae Adams, and Kyron Williams cedes no work to Blake Corum. So, as I just talked through that best case scenario, do you think that any of that is super likely? Worst case scenario would be Jalen Hurts doesn't do the tush push anymore. Aaron Rodgers is a little washed, or Garrett Wilson is never just able to see the volume because Brees takes up a lot of touchdowns, and Garrett Wilson is the wide receiver 12 instead of the wide receiver 5. But Sam drafted him at the wide receiver 5, right? So that would be a worst case scenario. Garrett Wilson doesn't return. And then this team just has no alpha to step up and like be that stud flex one player. That's the worst case. You're not going to be surprised by the grade after how I ran through how this draft went. It's the most C draft I've ever seen. It has a couple glimmering hopes, but he's in the tier 3 of average Joes with no chance to ascend. This is probably the 8 seed, maybe the 9. Like, when you just run through it, like, I don't love that many things about it. And when I talk through the best case scenario, like, you need a lot of things to bounce correctly. So that's why I'm going to rank it where it is. And I'm confident in that ranking, as Sam very rarely is able to get past that 5 or 6 seed mark. So saying he'll finish below the 5 or 6 seed is not that bold. C draft grade, tier 3.